Good afternoon to you, Nanda Pobeen, and welcome back to the Royal Borough of Caernarfon, with only just over 2 hours to go now to the investiture of the Prince of Wales. A ceremony first foreshadowed by the Queen when she created her eldest son, Prince of Wales, 11 years ago, and which has been in preparation ever since. A rare and notable occasion for Britain and the Commonwealth, and shared today through television with much of the rest of the world. This afternoon's events on BBC television will be seen by 9 countries in Europe: Canada, the United States, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand and Japan. But above all, of course, it's a great occasion for Wales.
Oh, to put it in Welsh, diwrnod mawr yw heddiw, diwrnod mawr I wlad fechan. A big day for a little country. Golwg yn ôl i'r gorffennol a golwg ymlaen i'r dyfodol. A look to the past and a look to the future.
This little town of Caernarfon, great in history, lies just to the west of the great mountain barrier of Snowdonia. Mountains which look green and welcoming enough today. But in winter, these mountains can still be impassable when snow and mist descend on the mountain roads.
The mountain Snowdon itself has in the Welsh language a name even more fitting. The Welsh for the kingly bird, the eagle, is Eryr, and our word for Snowdon is Eryri, the high place of eagles. Our mountain soars up at the center of the ancient kingdom of Gwynedd, cradle of song and saga, an obstinate territory which was entered by the invader, absorbed even, conquered, never.
But invaders from the east did settle on Caernarfon's coastal plain. The Romans borrowed the Celtic name of Caernarfon's river Sayont for their fortress of Saguntium. This they occupied for 300 years, till their empire decayed and fell, and they returned home.
But in this obstinate kingdom, one seed had sprouted, flourished, and was to go on flourishing, the seed of Christianity. As early as the 5th century, Sant Peblig dwelt in his monastic cell on the site of Caernarfon's parish church, to be built only 800 years after him in the 13th century.
Then came the Normans. England fell to them, and although the Welsh resisted for almost 200 years, at last they were forced to yield. In 1282, Llywelyn ap Griffith, the last Welsh Prince of Wales, was killed. A year later, King Edward I started to build this fortress and others like it, designed to keep the Welsh in subjection. Here the king's son was born, and in 1301, the king gave him the lands of the Principality of Wales, and after a lapse of some years, revived the title that went with them, creating him Prince of Wales.
That is why Castell Caernarfon, Caernarfon Castle, and with it the expression Prince of Wales, that is why the two became for us Welsh, for hundreds of years, objects of healthy hate, symbols of a foreign yoke. To Welsh eyes and ears, the whole region was infested with strangers, a jabber of incomprehensible tongues, and for many grim years, no Welshman walking in his own countryside was allowed to set foot within his own town walls. It was on this spot, Queen Ennila's Gate, that nearly 700 years ago, King Edward I may have held up his infant son to tell the Welsh that they had a new prince. And it was from the same gate in 1911 that Prince Edward, now the Duke of Windsor, was presented immediately after his investiture, the first to be held in Caernarfon. David Lloyd George, a local boy from the village of Llanystumdwy, became Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And during World War I, it was he who, at the blackest moments, set the British imagination on fire with oratory inspired by the Welsh pregethwyr, the preachers of his childhood. It was he, too, whose dream it had been in 1911 to see the then heir to the British throne invested not in London, but in Caernarfon, so restoring its true meaning to the title Prince of Wales. And yet the same Lloyd George, only 10 years earlier, had declared himself a nationalist.
Now, we shall get our first glimpse of the Prince of Wales today soon after 2 o'clock, when the royal train is due to pull in at Griffith's Crossing, about 2 miles northeast of Caernarfon, on the road to Bangor, and then the Prince will drive in along roads already lined with troops and spectators, drive in an open carriage with the Prince of Wales escort of the Household Cavalry, and he'll drive down to the castle here where the ceremony will take place. Inside the castle, most of the 4,000 guests are already assembled, and so are the orchestra, the choir, the military band, the Pennillion singers who will take part in the ceremony and the prelude to it. In 700 years, the castle has changed its colours more than once, twice besieged by the great Welsh hero Owain Glyndwr, yet a royal stronghold manned by the Welsh in the Civil War. Over the years since, it has been neglected and very nearly demolished, but the great stone walls have survived to make this monument of war a perfect amphitheatre for this ceremony of peace. It's only through the most careful work that the castle is preserved in such fine condition today. Its present constable is the Earl of Snowdon. Cliff Mitchellmore talked to him.
Lord Snowdon, what can you do as the constable of Caernarfon Castle? What are you able to do?
Well, I think when I was given the job, I looked on it as a job to really do as much as one could to improve the facilities, the amenities of the castle for the general public. But this was really a taking away job rather than putting back on a long-term basis. You see, I think the investiture has given one the opportunity to make a tremendous amount of permanent improvements.
When you say taking away, what do you mean by that? What kind of things did you take away?
Well, there was a lot of leftover 1911 clutter, and I was planning it to simplify it so that the castle could speak for itself, because you see, it's one of the finest medieval structures in Europe, and what one wants to do is to be able to see it in its simplest form.
But did it have this great, big, dramatic green space here, which really does pull the eye to it?
Well, the paths were very small paths, and they were sort of wiggled out by the side, and there were rather messy steps, and I just simplified it in a way so that when we were designing it, I found it very important to keep this green space open, because after all, one is designing it for television, one's designing it for the 500
What else is there that you would like to do with it? I mean, you've got this far. Is there anything with the castle that you'd like to do?
No, I mean, I think, you see, one's work certainly doesn't stop with the investiture. Because of the investiture, we've been able to improve the typography that goes with it, some of the souvenirs, the general look of the place, because we have about 300,000 people here a year. And
looking at it from that south view, which that is, you see, it's a very dramatic thing, but you've got this rather hideous car park, if I may say so.
Yes, well, I mean, I would like, again, on a long-term basis, if one could, to take away the car park and make that into a walking area and be grassed in. As it was, indeed, there was a painting by Richard Wilson that shows the castle as it was.
There it is. Oh, I see, with the castle really
and it
on the water.
Yes, it's growing out of the water, and I find that the cars just mess that side up, and it is the south facade which is the most exciting visually. And I think that if people do like to walk round, and I think that the motor car mustn't spoil this whole facade of it.
You were saying that it was cluttered up with 1911 investiture stuff. Can we just take a quick look at a couple of the pictures of 1911? I don't know how you're going to react to this one, first of all, which is
well, I think one had a completely different problem in 1911.
So it seems.
One was doing a production for the few elite, and not for a mass audience. But here is a structure that seems to me absolutely grotesque. It's not traditional, it's just a kind of grotty 1911 structure that must have cost the earth.
And you've done to it this?
Well, when we got Carl Toms to be overall consultant, who has worked in the theatre, at the National Theatre at Chichester, and has done a lot for television, one wanted to do a decorative scheme here that was extremely traditional, would read on the cameras, and the banners that are outside Queen Eleanor's Gate, which we see now on the screen, are low enough so that when the Queen and Prince Philip and Prince Charles come out onto the balcony, they will appear quite high. The carving of the dragon and the Prince of Wales feathers are done in expanded polystyrene and fiberglass. And it's
how
just very
How did you
traditional.
arrive at the Prince of Wales feathers? Because it seems to me there's so many designs for it, many differing designs for
I
it.
found originally a belt buckle of the, which is this one here.
Oh, the Carter Idris.
Yes, yes, which was the volunteers. And I found it in the museum here of the Royal Welsh Fusiliers, and it seemed to me to be much more baroque looking than the rather straight feathers that sometimes used. See, this feather turns over backwards. The Ich Dien runs through it in a more romantic
Yes, I
way.
haven't seen that before. I
Well,
must
we
admit.
based the whole thing on this, on the back of the chairs that are designed by John Pound, on the, behind us now where they're still finishing it off, on the dais itself, it is the same feathers as this belt buckle.
Well, that's what the dais looks like now. Can we quickly, finally, take a look at what the dais looked like in 1911?
Well, I think this would have been a total disaster. I mean, they crammed in as many people as they could. They had, I think it was 11,000 people. We've got 4,000 people in here now, because I wanted this feeling of open space. I didn't want all the red carpet and all this business. You wouldn't have been able to see anything. What I've tried to do is to make a theatre in the round so that the cameras can look in underneath the perspex structure, which has a traditional medieval feeling, but using perspex, which is a new material, as a transparent cover, which is twofold. It can keep the rain off the three main characters, but it is also important when it is empty, as the eye can be drawn towards it. There will be no colour on the dais at all. The dais itself is just made out of a disc of slate with the three simple thrones, again designed by John Pound, in the simplest possible way. They could be something from Stonehenge, they could be completely modern, but they shouldn't be gimmickly modern, they shouldn't be aggressively modern. Simplicity is the whole thing throughout.
Lord Snowdon, with our musical accompaniment, they too are rehearsing. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, as you've just seen, I talked to Lord Snowdon, Constable of Caernarfon Castle, early at the weekend, right in the very middle of the preparations for today, when the polishing and the dressing was still going on, and all the cleaning up had even really yet to begin. You suddenly see me sport a rose. A lady gave it to me on the way from the station. They're cheering all the way from the station, everybody and everything, I'll tell you. But Lord Snowdon, Constable of the Castle, his responsibility is really for the castle and the setting for the investiture. The ceremony is the responsibility of the Earl Marshal, the Duke of Norfolk. His has been the task of planning the ceremonial progress and a multitude of other jobs. He talked with me yesterday about the regalia. Earl Marshal, does the regalia have any religious significance?
No, one wouldn't say that it has any significance concerning religion, but it does date back as homage, fealty, and investiture to approximately the end of the Roman Empire, when the Saxons and the various people from Europe came into this country. And the connection between this is the fact that the overlord received homage from the vassal or servant prior to anything else that he allowed him to do. And if you like, you can say that it was considered a contract. And once the oath had been taken, then the overlord regarded him as his own person.
So the various parts of the regalia, as it were, seal various parts of the contract, unity and so on.
Yes, the first prince in 1301, in fact, was not, when he invested, there was no actual mention of any regalia, but it is fairly certain that he was given a sword because all peers of the estate of an earl or higher were invested with a sword. It then came to 1348 when you hear the mention of the caplet or coronet being worn, and I'm just going to glance at my dates so that I am correct.
So that we get them right.
And the next one, which we get the mention of the gold rod, comes really with the Black Prince. And then in 1399, we arrive at the various coronet, a ring on the third finger, and the gold rod comes in at a later date.
The whole thing has been a very critical operation for you in that you've had to walk the whole thing by stopwatch, just about.
Well, it's always been my hope that we get a timed program and we try to keep to it. It's been fairly difficult geographically to get the enormous number of people concerned with this investiture together until we get them tonight. And therefore it's been piecing little things together. And I will admit that in the last 48 hours, well, I'm
being bothered by a helicopter at the moment, which is whizzing away at the top.
The last 48 hours while I've been up here, having toured around the various camps and seen the orchestra, and listened to the trumpeters and the fanfares, the enormity of this investiture has really dawned on me, as I think it has really taken the people too.
I'm sure you will know that you were much quoted in the early press conferences. You thought you didn't have enough money. Do you now, having seen it, think that perhaps you have had enough?
Well, I don't really want to discuss that anymore. I think it's fair to say that we might have been allowed some more. On the other hand, I think everybody has done their best to keep within the amount allotted, and I hope that the result will be proved a success.
On this, the eve of the investiture, are you a comparatively happy man? Do you think that perhaps something may go wrong and will not go wrong?
You can never be a happy man on the eve, but I do take this opportunity of expressing my thanks to the enormous number of people whom the public don't realize have been working for months behind the scenes in their own little allotted places, where we have been grouping it slowly together to get it to the right temperature, we hope. And I am very hopeful that we will have a tremendous occasion tomorrow.
Your Grace, thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you.
The Earl Marshal I spoke to yesterday on the eve of this investiture. But now let's go back to the young man who's the very centre of this investiture, Prince Charles. He's had a great deal to say in his own education. He's made no secret of the fact that he very much enjoyed being at the Australian Mountain School of Timbertop. In his own words, it was there that he was thrown to the lions or to the kangaroos. So much of the influence of Timbertop on Prince Charles is part of his education. The other bit that he's really enjoyed is at Trinity, none more perhaps than appearing on the stage. John Cox was one of his colleagues on that. How good an actor was Prince Charles?
Well, a very varied one, quite capable of surprising people when they thought that, they come to the limit of his accents and the sort of thing he could do. And a dedicated one, because if he got something wrong, he'd always go back and do it, whereas I'm sure a lot of people are content with the first go.
Did he institute any of the humour himself?
Very much, because in fact everybody who appeared in that review in fact wrote for it. We all corrected each other's mistakes or said that each other's jokes weren't good enough, And he was as, good as doing that as I think everyone else was, including, putting some pretty awful puns over. And just generally adding, as well as contributing original material.
Was the umbrella joke his?
Well, yes.
For people who haven't heard the umbrella joke, you must tell them.
Well, this was simply a sketch which we needed in front of the curtain while we moved scenery over.
Yeah.
And it simply consisted of him stepping out in front of stage with an umbrella, very slowly putting it up, looking at the audience and saying, "I lead a very sheltered life," and nipping back in between the curtains again.
Well, he's not going to lead a sheltered life today. Do you think his acting will stand him in great stead today?
I think so, because I should think also the fact that he's led a life he has enabled him to be good in a review. We've got to keep a straight face, not see the funny side of things if they're too unintentional, and generally sort of keep going, which I think he did in the review, and I hope he'll do today.
Good, thank you very much indeed. Now let's talk to one of his closest friends at Trinity, Howell Jones, who's 21 today and come to see the 21st Prince installed. What about that for your friend?
Well, it's a great occasion for me as well as for him, as you can see.
Did he remember that you were 21 today? Or has he had too much to think about?
Well, I don't know, because I'm here and I live in Cardiff, so I haven't been able to get in touch with my parents as yet.
Now, you perhaps have talked to Prince Charles more than any other young man of his generation. What manner of boy is he?
Well, the thing that impressed me the most when I first met him and ever since is that he's, well, normal, if you see what I mean. You don't expect him to be normal, and he is. And he's intelligent, hard-working, and gets on well with all the people in Trinity.
You have yourself very strong views about Wales, its relationship with England, and so on. This is something you must have discussed with him. How much did he understand your point of view, and those of a great many Welshmen who feel like you?
Well, before he went to Aberystwyth, I think he had a glimmering of the feeling in Wales. I would discuss it with him quite often, but until he'd gone to Aberystwyth, I don't think he could really understand Wales. You can't understand Wales until you've been here for some time and talked to people at length and tried to learn the language. And I think he has understood a lot more since going there.
Are you impressed by this command of the Welsh language in such a short time?
Well, literally, I'm amazed by it. He said he was going to learn it before he went, but I didn't really believe that he'd learn the pronunciation as well as he has done, because as you know, it's very difficult for the English tongue to sort of twist their ways around the th and the khs,
But he seems to do this remarkably well, doesn't he?
Well, it just amazes me.
Can I ask you about him academically? Is he good academically?
Well, obviously, I wouldn't know his own essays and things, but his results seem to indicate that he's good, and he worked very hard, and every impression I've had in talking with him in conversation has always been that he is good academically, yes.
I can now confide in you that at this moment Prince Charles is watching you and hearing what you say. He's actually on the royal train.
I thought
So that's all right.
was, yeah.
Well, that's all right. I thought I'd tell you halfway through, Hal.
Yeah.
Before we got any further.
Yeah.
So it's all right. So now from here on you will no longer be embarrassed about what you say. Do you find, when you talk each to the other, that it's perhaps very difficult for him to distinguish between those people who really want to know him for himself and those who want to know him just because he's the Prince of Wales, just because he's a royal person?
Well, I don't know. You really ought to ask him that. It was difficult when I originally talked with him, because it was worse for me, because I always didn't want him to think that I wanted to know him as a sort of, because he was Prince of Wales. I was just sort of being friendly with him. So I think there was more a barrier on my side than on his. I don't know.
Well, having now told you that the Prince of Wales is watching you at this very moment, I wonder if I can ask you if you could pass him a message on this day. He's facing a pretty solid ordeal for the next couple of hours, isn't he?
Yeah.
There is the camera. There is His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. Well, you can speak to him in Welsh, preferably, or in English, or Welsh and English, whichever you like.
Well, I'll speak a little in Welsh, a little in English. I think his Welsh is probably getting better than mine, actually, now. Well, best of luck for today. We'll see you back yng Nghaergrawnt yn yr Hydref. I hope it goes well today. I hope your Welsh is as good as it was in Cardiff in the Welsh Regiment thing. Well, that's all I can say, really.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. You said it extremely well, too, if I may say so. And there we come now to the actual moment when the real ceremony of this investiture begins. This is the time now when the thousands of people who've been waiting here in the square will really begin to see the parade around the square and inside the castle. Already the crowds are assembling, and we go there now to join Richard Baker.
Well, the people in the castle here have got still an hour and 3/4 to go before the actual moment of investiture, but they'll have plenty to interest them. There's a concert being performed by modern Welsh composers, performed by a distinguished group of Welsh soloists, Welsh orchestra, BBC Welsh Orchestra, investiture choir, and a group of Pennillion singers we shall be seeing later. And we hope from time to time to hear something of this concert, but we shall also be watching the many processions which will bring those taking part in the ceremony to the castle. Now, the processions mostly consist of representatives of Welsh life in its many forms, but this procession is representative of the whole of Great Britain, the kings, heralds and pursuivants of arms in their brilliant, multicoloured ceremonial garb. Collectively, we might say, the stage management of today's great occasion. There's Garter, King of Arms, who is the head of the College of Arms and is the chief of staff, you might say, to the Earl Marshal in the entire planning and execution of this great occasion. There's Fitzalan, Pursuivant of Arms, Wales Herald of Arms on the right in the front, Norfolk Herald Extraordinary, Arundel Herald Extraordinary, Chester Herald, because, of course, the Prince is to be created Earl of Chester as well as Prince of Wales. Clarence Hugh, King of Arms there, responsible for all the seating arrangements in the castle, and again Sir Anthony Wagner, Garter, King of Arms, head of the Order of the Garter and indeed head of the Heralds of all England. So they go into the Watergate, dating back right into medieval times when they were employed by important dukes, important men in the country, and as time went on became attached to the royal court. They go into the Watergate, and this is the way that all the processions will come. You see over the Watergate one of the banners there showing coats of arms of the royal family, and this is the way that all the processions will come up into the lower ward of the castle. As the heralds come up, they go for the moment into the Eagle Tower, where they'll await the arrival of the other processions and eventually lead them to their places. There is the orchestra performing Rhapsody for a Prince by Mansell Thomas, with the choir, Roy Bohanna, conducting some of the soloists, including Gwyneth Jones, Margaret Price, famous singers who are international operatic stars. Price, Gwyneth Jones there, and on the right Trevor Anthony and Geraint Evans on the extreme right-hand side of the picture there. He has a big solo to perform in one of the later pieces we should be hearing. Now here comes the second procession and the first representative of Welsh life. It's particularly appropriate on this occasion because the Prince is still 4 months short of his 21st birthday. These are young people from the counties and county boroughs of Wales and from the capital city of Cardiff. Some of them are very remarkable indeed. A silver medalist in the Mexico Olympics, the captain of the Welsh judo team, a full-back for Wales, and several gold medal award winners in the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme. We'll be seeing them more closely later on.
These young people seem to be a proof that Wales is determined to remain as Welsh as it was when I, till the age of 8, spoke only Welsh at home. For them, the movement towards nationhood is no longer the exclusive province of the scholars and the dreamers. Its driving force stems largely and excitingly from the hearts and minds of our Ieuenctid Cymru, the youth Wales. It's inevitable that this driving force, admirable in moderation, should at moments drive too fast and too far. For instance, the Welsh League of Youth, Urdd Gobaith Cymru, despite the rousing reception they gave the Prince at Aberystwyth, are not represented here today. One must add, though, that most of the boys and girls invited to take part in this procession did accept. And they accepted because people are beginning to know that the Prince is concerned not to destroy, nor even to tolerate, but to build. They seem to sense that this investiture is a gesture of acknowledgement of the Welsh as a nation, and not, as we are sometimes sharply reminded it was in the days of Edward I, the harsh act of a conqueror. It would seem a far cry, surely, to equate a ceremony in 1969 with one in 1301. In any case, 668 years is a long run for a grudge.
David Goodridge from Pembrokeshire. He's, in fact, a bricklayer. Followed by Lorraine Jones, at the end, from Llandrindod-Wells Grammar School, on the left. And with her, the head boy of Pristine Grammar School. Now they go into the Eagle Tower, and they will also be waiting for the Prince's procession. Now, in the front there, in the blue suit, Martin Woodruff, Cardiff High School, the swimmer, the silver medal Mexico Olympics for the butterfly stroke. Young people in plain clothes and also in uniform, in St. John's Ambulance uniform, in Queen's Scout uniform, because all these people play a very prominent part in youth organizations in their respective towns. Now they'll go into the Eagle Tower and they'll wait for the arrival of the Prince in about an hour's time, in fact. And as is very right and proper, they will head the Prince's procession. There's the Penillion Choir, waiting now to sing the Cor Godrer Aran from Merionethshire. 26 men, they're mostly farmers, and they live near Bala. And they have a great reputation in this very difficult Welsh art of singing a descant, carefully planned and according to very special rules, to a well-known melody played on the harp. This is still Rhapsody for a Prince by Mansell Thomas, being sung by the Investiture Choir, the BBC, played by the BBC Welsh Orchestra. Now, here are some of the peers and gentlemen who will later be taking part in the Prince's procession. You see the two banners there, the banner of the Red Dragon and the banner of Llywelyn ap Griffith, the last Welsh Prince of Wales. And following them, in parliamentary robes of scarlet trimmed with ermine, the lords who will carry the insignia Prince's regalia when he is summoned to the Queen's presence at 3 o'clock for the ceremony of investiture itself. We look down from the ramparts of the castle, towering above the Shire Hall of Caernarfon with the flag of Caernarfon flying above it, the arms of the Royal Borough. Prior of the Hospital of the St. John of Jerusalem, Lord Aberdare, in a black cloak with a white cross, followed by the Earl of Plymouth and Lord Maurice of Borthagest, Sir Ben Bowen Thomas, President of the University College of Wales, and the two banners. The banner of the Red Dragon on a white and green ground, the Red Dragon of Wales, and the banner of Llewellyn ap Griffith, magnificent in gold and red. Earl Lord George, the Lord Ogmore following. And we shall be seeing a good deal of the peers later on. Lord Haycock and Lord Milo. Lord Harlech, former constable of the castle. Procession of the Lords, led by Hugh Charles Jones, one of the Green Staff officers, whose job is to guide the processions and make sure that they arrive on time, because every detail of the ceremony is planned to the last second. Behind him, on the left, Sir Thomas Parry Williams, an adored figure in Wales, President of the National Library. Very much revered, a very gifted man. On his left, Mr. Ben Jones, the Secretary of the Honourable Society of Camerdourion, Lord Aberdare. The Earl of Plymouth and Lord Maurice of Borthagest. Sir Ben Bowen Thomas. In the background, the Anglesey Hotel, which stands just on the edge of the Menai Strait. Lord Ogmore and Earl Lord George of Dufour, grandson of David Lloyd George, Lord Haycock and Lord Milo, and Lord Harlech, former British ambassador in Washington. There you see one of the poles which was to have supported a banner outside the Watergate. In fact, the banner here had to be removed because the head of the Royal Mews, Colonel Miller, decided that its flapping in the breeze, or there isn't in fact much breeze today, might disturb his horses. So the banner itself had to be taken down. And we can see very well now the coat of arms designed by Carl Toms that he was talking about this morning. Bronze gold in colour, standing out very well against the light brownish grey of the castle walls. Beautifully textured. Now, here comes the procession of the Mayor and Council of the Royal Borough of Caernarfon. It became a royal borough in 1963, when the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh paid a visit to the town, and the Queen bestowed the title, speaking in Welsh, standing at Queen Eleanor's gate, where the first presentation will take place later on. Just imagine what this means for a small town of 9,000 people, on view to the world as Caernarfon is today. The town has had a thoroughgoing facelift for the occasion, and the Civic Society, the local businessmen and the Civic Trust for Wales have got together to produce a street repainting scheme, and most property owners have agreed to have their houses repainted in carefully related colours. There are some of the shops there. Pale grey, pink, white, pale grey again. Those who have colour, I hope you'll forgive me if I do detail some of the colours for those who haven't got it. Another grey, mostly grey and white on that side. If we come round a little bit further, we shall see a rather startling red bank. There we are. A dark red with white windows. Smartened up the square very considerably. The square's been repaved and improved, densely packed with people today. Who said there were a lot of seats to spare? The square has been repaved and lots of other roads have been improved. One of the many benefits which will remain to the town after the investiture is over. And of course, there's the post office, Caernarfon Post Office. The council's also had to do quite a lot of other more mundane things, provide parking space for 40,000 cars and some 300 toilets for all the people coming in. We look back now at the procession of the councillors. This includes 2 insurance men, a blacksmith, a marine engineer, 2 shopkeepers, 6 teachers. There seem to be a very great number of teachers in North Wales, a retired sea captain, bank manager, and a housewife. Caernarfon, in fact, is a very Welsh town. It has the highest Welsh-speaking population of any town in the country, and indeed they have their own dialect, which isn't understood by anybody outside the town at all. Now come the aldermen in their red robes with their black cocked hats, the chaplain, the Reverend Pennant Lewis, mace bearer and town clerk just nearest you on the left, John Smith, and the mayor, Ivor Bowen Griffith, known as IB, an immensely popular man in Caernarfon. He's given tremendous hospitality to us, preparing our television coverage. If you were watching a little earlier this morning, you'll have heard IB talking to CM, Cliff Mitchellmore. The mayor is dressed in his ceremonial robes, of course, red, trimmed with fur, and that marvellous chain you may have heard about before, the mayoral chain with the coats of arms of all the princes of Wales, is now a link for the 21st, Prince Charles. And he'll wait at the Watergate because he's deputy constable of the castle, and he'll play quite a part later on in welcoming the royal guests. Let's go now and listen inside the castle to the Penillion singing by the Cor Godrer Aran, conducted by Tom Jones with Gwenllian Dwyryl as harpist. Now, with the Welsh singing going on, here is something which looks very foreign to anyone who isn't from Wales, but Emlyn Williams is, so I'll let him explain.
A foreign-looking phenomenon it is, too. What you are watching is a procession of bards. It's a form of animal life to which I myself belong, being proud to be an honorary bard created in 1953 at Eisteddfod Genedlaethol yr Hill, the National Eisteddfod at Rhyl, when I walked in my bard hood, literally, as my fellow bards are walking now. It's pretty well accepted that our national quirk, shall we call it, is an instinctive and passionate love of literature. For the Welsh, the beginning was the word. And for us, the word will never die. And the bards are, and always have been, the poets of our country, the magicians of the word, whether spoken, written, or sung. Their extraordinarily potent power dates from Roman times. During the next centuries, indeed, they were dangerously successful in persuading their princes to fight for independence. So dangerous that later edicts were issued against them by two furious English kings. And gradually the gorsedd became obsolete. But not dead. The bardic spirit smouldered on, and in 1792, in spite of nonconformity, the gorsedd came back to life on Primrose Hill in London, of all places. Cockney passers-by must have craned their necks, wondering if these were some odd refugees from the French Revolution. Even today in Wales, some people look on the gorsedd as an eccentric caper, but it cannot be denied that they are the watchdogs of the cultural identity of Wales. On being formally initiated into the gorsedd, on each new member is bestowed a bardic title. Here are some of the titles here today. Cerddores Moelfre. She is the singing girl of Moelfre. Elisabeth o Wendraeth. Elizabeth of the White Seashore. Eos Meirion, the nightingale of Meirioneth.
Now there is the great sword going past.
Whose bardic name is Gwyn Tregarth, that is the sword bearer. Gwyn Tregarth. He is Mr. Gwyn Jones, headmaster of Bodallow School, Colwyn Bay. Notice how he holds the sword. It must never, under any circumstances, be fully drawn from its sheath. For, as the quotation goes, this weapon must never be bared against any human being.
Now behind the sword bearer come two past archdruids. On the left of your picture, Cunnan, President of the National Eisteddfod Court, a very adored figure, and William Morris, both dressed in white with gold headdresses and gold front pieces. Behind them comes the Archdruid of Wales, Gwyndaf, the Reverend Gwyndaf Evans, dressed in, again, totally in gold from head to foot, and the officers of the National Eisteddfod Court in deep purple. How people are moving to their places in the upper ward. Here comes the beginning of the procession of bards into the castle. First comes, after the staff bearer, the Herald Bard, Dilwen Cymais, Mr. Dilwen Miles from Pembrokeshire. He wears thigh boots, and his costume is a mixture of blue, pale blue sash, white undergarment, and a dark blue cloak, colours of the 3 Gorsedd orders. Herald is followed by 6 bards, 2 men and 4 women, dressed in the green robes, which are the green robes of the initiates.
Urdd Ovid, it's called.
And then, after the ladies and gentlemen in green robes, come 6 in blue. These are the Order of Musicians and Literati,
which in Welsh is Urdd, Bardd, Cerddor, neu Lenor.
Then there is one exception, the Mistress of the Robes. I just lost sight of her for a moment, but she was carrying a horn of plenty. There she is, a horn of plenty, which is traditionally offered to the Gorsedd when they come to a town by a young maiden filled with wine to perhaps inspire their compositions.
The court of the National Eisteddfod. Llys yr Eisteddfod Genedlaethol ends the procession, and it wears purple and includes professors, lawyers, farmers, and even businessmen. This court of the National Eisteddfod shares with the Gorsedd the administration of the National Eisteddfod. Eisteddfod means literally a session. The event is an annual summer one and the prime festival of the Welsh people. It's a competitive one, dating back as far as the 6th century. Every year, thousands of people flock from all over the world to listen and watch as performers compete in the fields of literature and drama. And choirs challenge one another in song. The significant aspect of the Eisteddfod is the fact that from the platform not one word of English is spoken. Amidst a swirl of sound and movement and ceremony, the rhythms of our language ring lustily from pavilion to pavilion. By the way, in August of this year, Prince Charles will be attending the National Eisteddfod at Flint. Coming back to the Gorsedd of Bards, an essential requirement is a fluent knowledge of Welsh. Exceptions are only made in the case of a foreign dignitary or statesman or a head of state. Queen Elizabeth II, for instance, holds the bardic title of Lisabeth o Windsor.
Now, outside, the procession of mayors of the boroughs, county boroughs, and the capital city of Wales are waiting to come into the Watergate. Now, this is the largest of all the processions, 121 people. The mayors with their mace bearers and town clerks. There seems to be a slight hold-up at the Watergate, so they're just waiting to be admitted. Somebody's lost interest slightly. Now, they're led by the Mayor of Chester, the ancient borough outside the boundary of Wales, and then he's followed by the civic heads of Welsh towns in alphabetical order, towns that vary in character, from tiny market towns in the hills to fortress towns imposed upon Wales by her invaders, and huge industrial boroughs of South Wales shaped by steel in the industrial age and by coal. Now there's the sword, which is borne in front of the mayor of Caernarfon. This is the only town to have a sword in this way. It's presented by Henry VIII in 1546, a Roman town. And before the sword, we have mayors from places like Aberystwyth, the university town where the prince studied Welsh. From Bangor, a few miles from here, university town again, a centre of learning for 14 centuries. Barry, Beaumaris, on the Isle of Anglesey. Then following up the sword, mayors from very widely varying towns. From Haverfordwest, the capital of Pembroke, from Lampeter in Cardiganshire, from Llanelli, the great tin plate city in the south, and the great rugby town too. And representatives from the smallest of all the towns in all the county boroughs in Wales, Montgomery, only 900 people, a little town in the hills. And bringing up the rear of that procession, the Lord Mayor of Cardiff. Prince Charles had a tremendous triumph in Cardiff in June when he went there to present colours to the Royal Regiment of Wales. Bringing up the rear of the mayor's procession, Alderman Hallinan, the mayor of the capital city, Lord Mayor of the capital city of Cardiff. Now come the clerks and chairmen of the county councils of Wales, from Anglesey and Breconshire.
In Welsh, Sir Vaughan, Sir Frycheiniog.
Cardiganshire, Carmarthenshire.
Sir Aberteifi, Sir Gaerfyrddin.
Denbighshire, Flintshire.
Sir Ddimbych, Sir Flint.
Glamorganshire, Merionethshire.
Sir Forgannwg, Sir Feirionydd.
Monmouthshire, Montgomeryshire.
Sir Fanwy, Sir Drefaldwyn.
Pembrokeshire, Radnorshire.
Sir Benfro, Sir Faesafed.
And finally, Caernarfonshire.
Sir Caernarfon. A country of no fewer than 13 counties, crammed into an area of 800 square miles, an average of 600 square miles per county. And within this area, traversing it, one is constantly struck by the immense variety, scenic and economic. Leaving the docile plain of Anglesey, with its flat, mild seascape and its aluminium smelting and its nuclear power station, you find directly across the Menai bridges, towering over the straits, you find Snowdonia, towering even higher. From the National Park in Brecconshire, with its high Brecon beacons, to the farm-strewn pasture lands of Caernarfonshire, from the splendid isolation of the mountain called Plyn Limon, to Cardiff's urbane city centre and its teeming dockland, from Flintshire's gentle hillocks and Denby's streams and sylvan woods, to Glamorgan's industrial scars, bravely open to the sky, from Montgomery, which we call the paradise of Wales, to Pembroke's sea breakers foaming onto golden sands beneath a long bastion of cliffs. On every side, there's a new prospect. The faces of Wales.
The counties, if the proposed local government changes go through, are to be merged into larger units. Gwynedd, Clwyd, Powys, Dyfed and Gwent, which roughly correspond to the ancient kingdoms of Wales. So that's a curious full circle in history. Here come Her Majesty's Sheriffs of the Counties of Wales. A title that takes us back right to the beginning of local government. The sheriffs dressed in knee breeches, an 18th century costume with a ruff. They used to be very powerful men indeed, responsible for recruiting, policing, and tax collecting, which meant that a lot of them got very rich in the process, saluting the standard of the Guard of Honour of the Welsh Guards. From the days of Magna Carta, the sheriffs selected county members of Parliament, and today they're returning officers for county constituencies. The Queen chooses the sheriffs almost literally by sticking a pin in a piece of paper. In fact, it's a parchment scroll, and the Queen uses a bodkin, a practice that's said to have originated with Queen Elizabeth I, who happened to be sewing one day when the scroll was brought to her, so she used a sewing needle instead of a pin. Sounds a bit chancy, but in fact, all the sheriffs are men of distinguished reputation who play a central part in legal and ceremonial affairs in their counties. There's the Royal Train. We go 2.5 miles now north of Caernarfon. The Royal Train approaching through the woods. The special platform which has been built at Griffith's Crossing to receive it. This is almost the spot where the previous Prince of Wales began his entry into Caernarfon. There's the special platform. Lord Lieutenant, there's the High Sheriff of Caernarfonshire, Evan Wyn Jones, Secretary of State for Wales, George Thomas, and the Lord Lieutenant of Caernarfonshire will also be going on board the train, Sir Michael Duff. The train going very slowly because it's not, in fact, due to pull up until 2 o'clock. It's obviously trying to be absolutely on time. And as those of you who saw the royal film the other weekend will remember, there's a tremendous amount of preparation goes on inside the royal train for an occasion like this, and you'll probably be able to imagine some of these preparations. There are the household cavalry, horses of the household cavalry, who will provide 2 escorts today, a Prince of Wales escort for the Prince of Wales, and then a sovereign's escort for the Queen herself, drawn up, waiting for the arrival of the Prince and the Queen. There's the guard of honor of the... Not quite the right way to put it, was it? There's the goat of the Royal Welsh Fusiliers who are providing the guard of honor here. This fine regiment, the North Wales equivalent of the Royal Regiment of Wales in the south, and in fact the senior regiment in Wales. Very many interesting points about the Royal Welsh Fusiliers. There in the background they have the Household Cavalry. One of the most interesting features of the Royal Welsh Fusiliers is that they have a group of pioneers, ceremonial pioneers, and here they are. These are the men who are supposed to do the really tough work of the battalion, dressed in their aprons. And in the background there's Sergeant Street, who's their sergeant. He wears a red sash and he's got a beard. He's the only man who's allowed to wear a beard officially on a ceremonial parade in the British Army. The Royal train has in fact, now it can be told, spent the night at Menai Bridge, not very far away from here, and the royal family this morning, as you may have heard, have been watching television. In the background, the Ferodo brake lining factory, which was opened a little while ago by Princess Margaret. Duff on the left, the Lord Lieutenant of Caernarfonshire, Evan Wynne-Jones, the Sheriff, and George Thomas, the Secretary of State for Wales. They'll go on board briefly to greet the royal family. We shan't, in fact, see any members of the royal family certainly for a good 5 minutes, perhaps almost 10, so we could go back perhaps and look at what's going on in the castle. Going in slowly to a key figure in the ceremonial at Caernarfon Castle today. Colonel Jiggs Jaeger, the musical director of the Royal Military School of Music at Kneller Hall. He's perched right up there on the top of the Watergate, and he'll be directing the fanfares played by the state trumpeters and also by the trumpeters of the Royal Military School, Kneller Hall. He was a trumpeter here himself, incidentally, when there was a royal visit in 1937 after the coronation. Sheriffs now have reached the upper ward of the castle. They'll be going on to take their places. here comes the procession of MPs. On the right, Leo Apse, Labour, Pontypool, who has introduced a number of very controversial bills into the Commons. With him, Donald Anderson, Labour, Monmouthshire, Donald Coleman and Ednivid Davis, Labour, Conway. On the right, third in the procession, Desmond Donnelly, Pembrokeshire, resigned the Labour whip in May 1968 and formed the United Democratic Party, his own party. Next to him, William Edwards.
Among those not attending is Mr. Gwynfor Evans, member for Caernarfon, and our only Welsh Nationalist MP. Most of the other 12 members who are also not here are absent only because they were participating, and still are, in local celebrations to do with today's event. Of the 23 Welsh MPs who are here, 18 belong to the Labour Party. Eloquent proof that the Welsh can, at this moment, be labelled Labour. Before they were Labour, they were, under the Lloyd George spell, Liberal. And before they were Liberal, well, they were rebels. Rebels by nature. Silent rebellion, but rebellion nonetheless against the status quo. Edward I, we've seen, subdued Wales. A subjection which was to continue for 2 centuries. She became a country in shadow. The shadows deepened. There was even an official attempt to stamp out the Welsh language. Not surprisingly, the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century brought with it the mushroom growth of socialism. And even in these days, many Welshmen feel that the government in London remains blandly unaware of many of our problems. The Welsh office in Cardiff, however, has for 5 years worked hard to assuage those feelings with ambitious economic plans.
Emlyn Hewson, leader of the Liberals in Wales, Montgomeryshire. There is Mrs. Irene White, the Under-Secretary of State at the Welsh Office. In front of her, Ivor Davis, Labour, Gower.
She's the daughter, too, of course, of Lloyd George. I mean, Lloyd George is Tom Jones, who was so closely connected with Lloyd George for many years.
Mrs. White, followed by Nigel Birch and Goronwy Roberts. Then comes the Right Honourable Clydwyn Hughes, the second Secretary of State for Wales, wearing glasses. Now Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. Unfortunately, Right Honourable James Griffiths, the Labour member for Llanelli, is not able to be here. He's unwell. The next procession consists of representatives of the House of Lords, reminding us that the ceremony of investiture used at one time to be a parliamentary ceremony. After Richmond, Herald of Arms, come Lord Beaumont of Whitley, Lord Enniglyn, Lord Brooke, on the right, second in the procession, former Minister for Welsh Affairs from 1957 to 61. On the left, Baroness Phillips, Government Whip, since 1965, wife of Morgan Phillips, the great secretary of the Labour Party, followed by Lord Chalfont. On the left, Alan Gwyn Jones, Minister of State, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Lord Gladwin on the right, United Nations representative from 1950 to 54, ambassador to France from 1954 to 1960. Followed by Lord Shepherd, Lord Swansea, Lord Carrington, Lord Boston, Viscount Hall, and Earl Jellicoe. Lord Carrington wearing the glasses. And bringing up the rear, Earl St Albin, an opposition chief whip in the House of Lords. So there we have represented the leaders of both parties in the House of Lords. Prime Minister and Mrs Wilson wearing a pale mauve dress and a matching hat with some blue in. A rather striking outfit. They're followed by the Lord Chancellor, Lord Gardner. This procession is led by the only private herald who still exists in England, Slains Percivant, a private herald of the Countess of Errol. There's Richmond Herald leading the John Brooke Little, leading the procession of peers. He is a man with Somerset Herald, Rodney Dennis, Colonel Rodney Dennis, who's been responsible for all the timing of the ceremonial and many, many details of the ceremonial today, and has in fact helped us in BBC television very greatly. There's the constable of the castle, Lord Snowdon, wearing a dark green uniform, which he designed himself with Carl Toms. Very simple, very elegant line. Now back at Griffith's Crossing, members of the royal family coming out, Duchess of Gloucester, Prince Richard of Gloucester, out into the cars which will bring them to the castle. There's the Duke of Kent, very smart uniform, which is ours. The Duchess of Kent in a brilliant ice cream pink dress. Angus Ogilvy and Princess Alexandra. Princess Alexandra wearing a bright mustard yellow outfit. Lord Mountbatten, personal ADC to the Queen. So the members of the royal family leave Griffith's Crossing on their way into Caernarfon now. And another brief glimpse of the Prime Minister and Mrs. Wilson and the Lord Chancellor being conducted to their places in the upper ward. And now a very important procession is coming down. The procession of the Church in Wales. It consists of representatives of all the Christian bodies, nonconformist churches, Anglican Church, Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Bishop of Menevia, the Archbishop of Cardiff, the Bishop of Bangor, the Archbishop of the Church in Wales are there, just behind the Bible, the leader of the Free Churches in Wales, Reverend William Owen, and the Bible is carried there. The Bible which is so significant in the preservation of the Welsh language, the Welsh Bible of 1588. Borne by Margaret Parry from the Girls' Grammar School in Caernarfon, the cross in front of her, carried by Kenna Jones, a sixth former from Caernarfon Grammar School, a special cross made of slate and specially designed by Lord Snowdon. Now, what we're looking at now is an incident of some kind out in a field near Sportsman Nursery. Somebody's been hurt there. Somebody's... I heard an explosion just a little moment ago. We thought that one of the guns had gone off accidentally. There could just possibly have been an explosion. Tremendous security precautions are being taken all around the town. Hundreds of police and detectives around. So let's hope this is not something serious. Now the church procession enters the castle.
The Bible, which we see here, has for Wales a particular significance. It's a version which made its appearance in 1588, having been translated from the Latin into Welsh by William Morgan, Vicar of Llanrhaeadr Mochnant. In 1620, a revised version of this translation became a Fersiwn Awdurdodedig, the authorized Welsh Bible. For exactly 100 years, this was to be the only book in existence able to serve as a textbook of the Welsh language. And it is estimated that over 250,000 people, grown-ups, old people, children, 250,000,
and there's the Prince of Wales
over it.
Just to interrupt for a moment, Emlyn, there's the Prince of Wales. He's got out of the train now and into his carriage, wearing the uniform of the Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Welsh Regiment. Smiling. With him is the Secretary of State for Wales, wearing the Order of the Garter and his only medal, as he himself has said, the Coronation Medal. David Checketts is a query in the foreground. And there's the escort commander, Major Broughton, of the Blues and Royals, who will, his horse, and the semi-state landau, will bring the Prince now into town. This is the first time we've seen the Prince in a state drive on his own, and the first time that a Prince of Wales escort has been seen for a good many years, since, in fact, his great-uncle was Prince of Wales. Now he moves off into town. We shall pick him up in just a few minutes when he's entering the outskirts of Caernarfon itself. And there's the Guard of Honour, the Royal Welsh Fusiliers, and the Household Cavalry disappearing at the top there into the distance. Now here's the procession of the Yeomen of the Guard, one of the most colourful ingredients of this ceremony today. In their scarlet and gold, led by their captain, Lord Bowles. They're the oldest military organisation in the world, founded almost 500 years ago. Dressed in scarlet and gold, white plume for the captain, white ruffs for the yeomen. They have always maintained a close guard on the sovereign, as their place in the ceremony today suggests. One of their jobs used to be to drive a sword through the sovereign's bed to make sure that there was nothing harmful in it, and tasting the sovereign's meals. That's part of tradition, but there's no doubt they could be an effective guard if they had to be. They're all over 6 feet tall, at least 1 inch taller than a guardsman has to be. Following the Yeomen of the Guard, and in fact taking precedence over them, are the Gentlemen-at-Arms. They are the nearest guards by traditional right, and they'll stand very close to the dais for the investiture. They carry axes, which are reminiscent of weapons once used when boarding an enemy ship in the old days. Once called the Gentlemen's Spears, created by Henry VIII in 1509. The first members of the royal family coming down Castle Ditch and to the Watergate. There's the mayor waiting to greet the members of the royal family. The sheriff of Caernarfonshire has just gone into the castle out of the first car. He'll be joining the procession in a few moments. Duchess of Gloucester, that's the mayor, and Prince Richard. Sheriff of Caernarfonshire, now waiting in the Eagle Tower. Duchess of Kent, Duke of Kent, and there, out at Griffith's Crossing, Majesty the Queen in a brilliant yellow coat and matching hat with the Duke of Edinburgh in Field Marshal's uniform. Queen Mother behind the Queen is wearing apple green, an apple green lace dress. And then Princess Anne is in turquoise blue with a matching pillbox hat. The Queen will now be invited to inspect the Guard of Honour of the Royal Welsh Fusiliers. Queen is Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Welsh Fusiliers. Guard of Honour commanded by Major Inkin. She briefly pauses to admire the goat. In fact, he's a royal goat. He comes from the royal herd, which at present is stationed at Whipsnade. On the back, you can see the flash, which is typical of the Royal Welsh Fusiliers and quite unique. It reminds us of the days when soldiers wore pigtails, and they used to keep their pigtails in a bag to keep the grease and powder off their uniforms. And the Royal Welsh are the only regiment allowed to wear this distinction. Advisors tell me that the Queen's hat is of Tudor-esque design, rather Tudor in quality, especially designed for her by Norman Hartnell. Was allowed to be continued by the Royal Welsh by William IV, and an old rhyme refers to it as the relic of many a fight and siege and sack. It points a moral and adorns the back. When the Queen, in fact, leaves Griffith's Crossing here, there'll be a royal salute fired by the guns of 22 Light Defence Battery on Coed Helen, the heights of Coed Helen. 22nd Light Air Defence Regiment of the Royal Artillery. As soon as the carriage wheels at Ferodo start to move, so listen out for that. Glimpse of Princess Margaret there. She's wearing a matching dress and coat in peach linen and a hat in matching chiffon. Now the semi-state landors are brought up. The Queen's carriage will be drawn by grey horses, 4 grey horses. Two postilions are Mr. Ernest Long, who's been in the Royal Service for 30 years, and Mr. Thornton, well used to driving the royal family. Now, here's the Prince's escort coming into the outskirts of the town, just to the northwest of the town. I should think now about 3/4 of a mile away from the castle. Prince of Wales escort, 1 officer and 40 men from the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals. It's It's a Blues and Royals escort, and so the Blues and Royals come after the carriage, which in this case is drawn by 4 bay horses from the Royal Mews. Now we should be ready at any moment when the other members of the royal family have got into their carriages for this procession to move off, the Queen's procession, and for the royal salute. Very, very brilliant outfit the Queen Mother has, a very startling shade of apple green. Master of the horse in the carriage with them. Here's the Prince getting now further into town. A considerable problem for an escort of the household cavalry. So many miles away from London, 238 miles from their normal stamping grounds in Whitehall. And these rather narrow roads of Caernarfon. Not very many people standing on the roads here, but of course I expect everybody inside watching television, because there they get a more comprehensive view of what's going on. The RAF lining the route at this point. A very glittering sight, those cuirasses in the pale sunshine, the red plumes of the Blues and Royals. Now in the castle, there's a momentary pause. You can see the gentlemen at arms standing around the dais in the foreground. Now here, members of the royal family are conducted to their places in the castle. Princess Alexandra, Mr. Angus Ogilvy. There's the front, the Prince of Wales escort, getting now quite near to the town, led by Mr. Oliver, Queen's stud groom from Windsor, on a grey horse, followed by the Prince of Wales escort. Lifeguardsmen in front. Lining the route at this point, men of the Royal Regiment of Wales, of which the Prince is Colonel-in-Chief. This, of course, is a moment which has been looked forward to by vast numbers of people in Caernarfon. But a moment also of great tension. There's the stud groom. He has the job of timing the procession, and he's acting as a pace setter. And then horses of the Metropolitan Police, very experienced in such things. Among the Royal Regiment of Wales on display today, there are in fact a group of Australians who come from New South Wales. They're members of the Volunteer Army. We've been looking around for them. We haven't quite spotted them yet, but there are 5 of them, and they come from the regiment connected, the New South Wales Regiment of Australia's 2nd Division, affiliated to the Royal Regiment of Wales. This is the narrowest part of the street coming into the square. In front of the escort, just coming up to the men's outfitting shop called Percy Geo. He's a cousin of the mayor. In fact, lots of people around here seem to be related. So the procession approaches the town square, and there's an awkward turn for the escort. Welsh Guards lining the route here. Here in the square, people slept out all night to wait for this moment. First of the lifeguards now enter Castle Ditch, the narrow street just down by the side of the castle. And there's really heartwarming enthusiasm. Discordant note there. Just a few boos among the cheers. The Guard of Honour of the Welsh Guards waiting in the foreground. When the Prince reaches the Watergate, his standard will be broken out on the Eagle Tower. At the moment, flying on the Eagle Tower, there are the Union Jack and the Standard of Wales. Now here's the Queen, following up behind her son and just on the outskirts of the town with a full sovereign's escort of household cavalry. 109 men from the Lifeguards and the Blues and Royals. Greeted by the Mayor of Caernarfon, Deputy Constable of the Castle, and the Town Clerk of Caernarfon. It's the Constable of the Castle and Minister of Public Building and Works, Mr. Silkin, who is, of course, responsible for the maintenance of these ancient fabrics. And this is the Queen's procession coming in. First comes an NCO, then the advance points. The advance points first, and an NCO, and the first division of Blues and Royals. Blues and Royals leading this time because this is a Lifeguards escort, and the Lifeguards in this case will be behind the royal carriage. Red plumes of the Blues and Royals. Amalgamation of the Royal Horse Guards and the 1st Dragoons. Now the subaltern here, leading the 1st Division, has the most difficult job in the escort, since he's really responsible for the timing of the whole thing and controls the pace. They, in fact, go at about 8 miles an hour. Inside the castle, the procession which will lead the Prince of Wales to his place is forming up. 2 gentlemen at arms come first. Then the Archduke of Wales, Gwyndaf, and the President of the National Eisteddfod Court, Caernarfon, and a fanfare is sounded. Prince's personal standard for use in Wales. After the Archdruid and the President of the National Eisteddfod Court, Secretary of the Society of Camaraderie, and Sir Thomas Parry Williams. Just a glimpse of the Queen's procession, well on its way to the castle now. The Prince is preceded by President of the National Museum of Wales, Chancellor of the University of Wales, Red Dragon banner and the banner of Llewellyn ap Griffith. Behind him come Lord Davis and Lord Duniver. Now the Prince goes into the Chamberlain Tower in the middle ward of the castle, where he will prepare for the moment when Garter, King of Arms, comes to fetch him, to bring him to the Queen. The banners of the Red Dragon and of Llewellyn ap Griffith are borne at the doors. Final division of the Queen's escort coming through the square, and the Queen now approaching Castle Ditch.
looks nice.
Now, when the Queen reaches the watergate of the castle, there will be a ceremony, a very ancient ceremony of admission, which will take place as soon as the Queen arrives. She'll be received at the foot of the steps of the castle by the Mayor of Caernarfon as Deputy Constable. The equerry in waiting will then knock on the door and demand admission in the name of the Queen. Then the constable of the castle, Lord Snowdon, will descend the steps bearing the key, which is the token of his right to maintain the security of the castle. It's a huge affair, made of steel, 15 inches long, weighing 6¼ pounds. And when the Queen gets to the watergate, gets out of her carriage, she will touch the key and return it into the constable's keeping. I've told you about this a little in advance so that when it happens, we can just watch it. There'll be a royal salute from the Guard of Honor. And when the Queen gets into the inside of the castle, the royal standard will replace the prince's standard on Eagle Tower. The first thing that will happen here is that an equerry will knock on the gate of the castle, which in fact has been closed, to demand entrance in the Queen's name. Key is carefully secured on that cushion, unless lest anything should happen to tip it off. Now the Queen briefly goes into the Eagle Tower and awaits the formation of the procession which will bring her to the upper ward. And we should very soon have a fanfare played by the state trumpeters of the Household Cavalry, and the standards should be exchanged. There is the whole scene at Caernarfon with the Menai Strait in the background, high tide, Anglesey in the distance, one of the coastal minesweepers of the Royal Naval Reserve on the left, dressed overall for the occasion. There's the town of Caernarfon with its blue-grey roofs and the castle dominating it. The beginning of the Queen's procession, 2 gentlemen at arms. Brilliant scarlet tunics, white plumes. Now this, in fact, is the Queen Mother's procession first, which precedes the Queen's. Processional music, Crown Imperial by William Wilson. Margaret on her left. Mother, Princess Margaret and Princess Anne take their places in their special seats on the grass near to the dais. this splendid medieval amphitheatre is almost filled, ready for the arrival of Her Majesty the Queen. Queen preceded by the sword of state, borne by the Marquis of Anglesey. This is something which is only seen on great ceremonies such as this. There are the heralds behind them, the Home Secretary, Mr. Callaghan, who will read the letters patents in English, and Lord Snowdon, followed by Norroy and Ulster King of Arms, Clarence Hugh King of Arms, and Garter King of Arms. There is our first glimpse today, on the right, of the Earl Marshal, the Duke of Norfolk, who has been responsible for arranging this ceremony of state, as so many others. In this procession are the heads of the armed services, Lords Lieutenant of the Counties of Wales, and the heralds of arms.
When the Queen reaches the dais, the choir and the guests will sing God Save the Queen, preceded by the Welsh national anthem, Land of My Fathers, Ein Wlad fy Nhadau. And now begins the ceremony of the investiture. A ceremony which is exactly as it was in medieval times. It has not changed. Her Majesty the Queen commands the Earl Marshal to direct Garter King of Arms to summon His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. Sir Anthony then proceeds to the Chamberlain Tower to convey to the Prince Her Majesty's command. The Prince's procession is headed by the Wales Herald of Arms on the right and the Chester Herald of Arms on the left. After the heralds, a man whose office was created only 5 years ago, the Secretary of State for Wales. He will read the letters patent in Welsh. Garter, King of Arms, bearing the letters patent. These may be only paper, but they are all important, vital, for they constitute the instrument which will create Prince Charles, Prince of Wales. The Prince himself, bareheaded now in readiness for his crown, is flanked by Lord Davies and Lord Dinnever. The sword is carried by Earl Lloyd George of Dwyfor. The crown by the President of the Liberal Party of Wales, Lord Ogmore. The golden rod, a Wialen Aur by Lord Haycock. The ring by Lord Maylor. The mantle by the former British ambassador to Washington, Lord Harlech. Garter, King of Arms, delivers the letters patent to the Lord Chamberlain, presents them to the Queen. Her Majesty hands the English text of the letters patent to the Home Secretary, the Right Honourable James Callaghan. and the Welsh text to the Secretary of State for Wales, the Right Honourable George Thomas. The Home Secretary will now read the letters patent in English.
Elizabeth II, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of our other realms and territories, Queen, Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith, to all lords, spiritual and temporal, and all other our subjects whatsoever, to whom these presents shall come, greeting. Know ye that we have made and created, and by these our letters do make and create our most dear son, Charles Philip Arthur George, Prince of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Duke of Cornwall and Rothesay, Earl of Carrick, Baron of Renfrew, Lord of the Isles, and Great Steward of Scotland, Prince of Wales, and Earl of Chester, and to the same our most dear son, Charles Philip Arthur George, have given and granted, and by this our present charter do give, grant, and confirm the name, style, title, dignity, and honour of the same principality and earldom. And him, our most dear son, Charles Philip Arthur George, as has been accustomed, we do ennoble and invest with the said principality and earldom, by girding him with a sword, by putting a coronet on his head, and a gold ring on his finger, and also by delivering a gold rod into his hand, that he may preside there and may direct and defend those parts. To hold to him and his heirs, kings of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of our other realms and territories, heads of the Commonwealth forever. Wherefore we will and strictly command for us, our heirs and successors, that our most dear son, Charles Philip Arthur George, may have the name, style, title, state, dignity, and honour of the Principality of Wales and Earldom of Chester aforesaid, unto him and his heirs, kings of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of our other realms and territories, heads of the Commonwealth, as is above mentioned, in witness whereof we have caused these our letters to be made patent. Witness ourself at Westminster, the 26th day of July, in the 7th year of our reign.
Next, the Secretary of State for Wales will read the same letters patent in Welsh, during which the Queen will invest the Prince of Wales with the insignia of his principality and of the Earldom of Chester.
Elizabeth yr Ail, drwy ras diw, brenhines y deyrnas gyfunol, Prydain fawr a gogledd Iwerddon, a'n teyrnasoedd, a'n tiriogaethau eraill. Pennaeth y gymanwlad ac amddiffynydd y ffydd. Cyfarchion i'r arglwyddi, ysbrydol a daearol bob un, ac i'r oll o'n daeliaid eraill, a ddichon dderbyn y geiriau hyn. Bydded hysbys I chwi, ddarfod I ni wneud a chreu a thrwy ein llythyr hwn a rydym yn gwneud a chreu ein hanwylab fab Charles Philip Arthur George tywysog y deyrnas gyfunol Prydain Fawr a Gogledd Iwerddon, Dig Cernyw a Rothesau, Iarll Carrick, Barwn Renfrew, Arglwydd yr Ynysoedd a Phrif Steward yr Alban, yn dywysog Cymru ac Iarll Caer. Ac iddo ynto ein hanwylab fab Charles Philip Arthur George yr rhoddwyd ac y cyflwynwyd a thrwy ein siarter bresynol yr rhoddwn, y cyflwynwn ac y cadarnhawn enw, cyfenw, teitl, urddas ac anrhydedd y dywysogaeth honno a'r iarsiaeth honno. Ac fel y bu'n arfer ar wisgwn ac anrhydeddwn ein hanwylab fab Charles Philip Arthur George a'r dywysogaeth honno a'r iarsiaeth honno. Trwy ai wrgysu ef a chleddef.
Her Majesty, following the age-old tradition, takes the sword and creates her son, Earl of Chester. The symbol of sovereignty.
Modrwy air ar ei fus.
The gold ring, symbol of unity, the unity in this instance being the Prince's marriage to Wales.
A hefyd drwy drosglwyddo gwialen awr i'w law.
The gold rod, symbol of temporal rule.
Fel y bo iddo lywyddu yno ac amddiffyn y rhan barthau hynny a'i cadw i ddiwedd a'i etwefeddion. Brenhinoedd y deyrnas gyfunol, Prydain Fawr a Gogledd Iwerddon.
The Prince pays homage to the Queen by placing his hands between those of her mother.
A gymanwlad dros byth. Am hynny, yr ewyllisiwn ac yr rhoddwn o'r chymyn caeth ar ein rhan ni a'n hetifeddion a'n holynwyr. Y bydd un hanwylab fab Charles Philip Arthur George gael enw, cyfenw, teitl, ystad, urddas ac anrhydedd, tywysogaeth Cymru ac iarsiaeth Caer, a enwyd uchod arno'i hun a'i etifeddion, sef brenhinoedd y deyrnas gyfunol, Prydain Fawr a Gogledd Iwerddon, a'n teyrnasoedd, a'n triogaethau eraill, penaethiaid y gymanwlad fel y crybwyllwyd uchod. Yn dystiolaeth o hynny, rydym wedi peri i'r llythyr hwn gael ei wneud yn freintiol. Na ni ein hunain, ydym yn tystio yn San Steffan ar y 6 dydd ar 20 o Orffennaf yn 7 flwyddyn ein teyrnasiad. troi warant, dan lofnod, y frenhines a'i hun.
I, Charles, Prince of Wales, do become your liege man of life and limb, and of earthly worship, and faith and truth I will bear unto thee, to live and die against all manner of folks.
The Queen, by raising up the Prince and exchanging with him the kiss of fealty, fealty being the ancient word for loyalty, the Queen pledges herself to protect this her dependent and acknowledges his status as a sovereign prince. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary and the Secretary for Wales deliver the letters patent to the Queen, who hands them to the Prince. The loyal address from the people of Wales will be read to the Prince by the President of the University College of Wales, Aberystwyth.
Trigain mlynedd na mynd dwy o flynyddoedd yn ôl yma yn y Bangre hon, yng Nghastell Caernarfon, estynodd Sir John Rhys groeso Cymru gyfan I rhagflaenydd eich uchelder brenhinol, ac yntau'n llanc ifanc ar adeg ei arwisgo yn dywysog Cymru. A heddiw ar y chlysur cyffilib, dyma estyn croeso yr un mor gynnes I chwythau, dywysog arall. Yr adeg honno wrth ddatgan ei falchder fod yr arwisgo'n digwydd ar dir Cymru, fe eglurodd Sir John y cysylltiad agos a fu rhwng aelodau'r teulu brenhinol a Chymru, o ran gwehelydd a chyfraniad i'w bywyd. Heddiw, da yw'r dystiolaeth hon am ei barhad. Mae amodau bywyd cymdeithasol wedi newid llawer dechrau'r ganrif hon, a theimlodd Cymru fel pob gwlad ddwyster ei grym, ond yn awr mewn dyddiau gwahanol, mae Cymru yn edrych ymlaen at gyfnod pan fydd tywysog Cymru yn ymddiddori'n bersonol fwy yn ei phroblemau a'i dyheadau, ei hiaith a'i thraddodiadau a lles ei phobl. Ac wrth i'r tywysog ymserchu ynddi, mae Cymru'n hyderu y bydd y cysylltiad brenhinol hwn yn foddion I gadarnhau ei bywyd, I gyfoethogi ei chyfraniad i'r deyrnas gyfunol, a gloywi ei delwedd yng ngolwg y gymanwlad a gwledydd y byd. Yn yr hyder a'r gobaith hwn, ac ar yr achlysur hanesyddol hwn, dymunwn felly eich cyfarch a'ch croesawu a thystio un teyrngarwch. May it please your Majesty, 58 years ago in this ancient stronghold of Caernarfon, Sir John Rhys extended the welcome of the whole of Wales to your Royal Highness's predecessor and expressed his delight that the investiture was being held on Welsh soil. He gave the historical background to the close connections that have existed between the royal family and Wales, connections both of ancestry and of service to the life of our country. Today, in the same famous place, we are met to extend the same warm welcome to your Royal Highness.
Social conditions have changed a great deal since the beginning of this century, and Wales, like every other country, has felt the force of change. Now the Principality looks forward to a period when its prince will associate himself personally with its aspirations and problems, its language and traditions, and the welfare of its people. And as your Royal Highness reveals your affectionate interest, Wales hopes that this royal connection will serve to strengthen its own life, to enrich its contribution to the United Kingdom, and to enhance its image in the eyes of the Commonwealth and the countries of the world. It is with this confidence and hope that we greet you and declare our loyalty.
Sir Ben Bowen Thomas.
Mae'ch ynerchiad wedi fy nghyffwrdd yn ddwys, a gallaf eich sicrhau fy mod wedi cymryd sylwi o'r gobeithion am lygwyd anddyn nhw. Yn wir, rwy'n bwriadu cysylltu fy hun o ddifri, mae o'n gair a gweithred a chymaint o fywyd y dywysogaeth, a'r fath dywysogaeth ydy hi, ag a fydd yn bosibl. Roeddwn ni'n teimlo cryn dipyn o ffalchder ac emosiwn wrth dderbyn y symbolau hyn om swydd yn y gair odidog hon. Lle ni allain neu beidio a theimlo rhyw gyffro yn awyrgylch ei gwyllter hynafol. Neu fedrwn unne, chwaith, lai na bod yn ymwybodol o hanes maith Cymru a'i phenderfyniad i barhau ar wahân ac i wachod ei threftydaeth arbennig ei hun. Treftydaeth sy'n mynd yn ôl i niwloedd hen hanes y Brython ac sydd wedi cynhyrchu cymaint o ddeirion, tywysogion, beirdd, ysgolheigion ac yn ddiweddarach fydd gan torion enwog. Gŵn cofiadwy iawn a ser amlwg y myd y ffilmiau. Fe ysbrydolwyd pob un o'r bobl hyn mewn rhyw ffordd neu gilydd gan y treftydaeth hon. The words of your address have certainly touched me deeply, and I can assure you I have taken note of the hopes expressed in them. It is indeed my firm intention to associate myself in word and deed with as much of the life of the Principality as possible. And what a principality! It is with a certain sense of pride and emotion that I have received these symbols of office, here in this magnificent fortress, where no one could fail to be stirred by its atmosphere of time-worn grandeur, nor where I myself could be unaware of the long history of Wales in its determination to remain individual and to guard its own particular heritage. A heritage that dates back into the mists of ancient British history, that has produced many brave men, princes, poets, bards, scholars, and more recently, great singers, a very memorable goon, and eminent film stars. All these people have been inspired in some way by this heritage. I hope and trust that in time I shall be able to offer my own contribution. And to do that, I seek your cooperation and understanding. Speaking for myself, as a result of my 2-month stay in this country, I have come to see far more in the title I hold than hitherto. I am more than grateful to the people of this principality for making my brief stay so immensely worthwhile and for giving me such encouragement in the learning of the language. I know that social conditions have changed since 50 years ago, and, of course, are still changing. The demands on a Prince of Wales have altered, but I am determined to serve and to try as best I can to live up to those demands, whatever they might be in the rather uncertain future. One thing I am clear about, and it is that Wales needs to look forward without forsaking the traditions and essential aspects of her past. The past can be just as much a stimulus to the future as anything else. By the affirmation of your loyalty today, for which I express my gratitude, this will not simply be a faint hope.
The whole assembly here in the castle stands to applaud the prince.
The ceremony of the investiture is over and the religious service will now begin. First, everyone will sing the hymn O Anfon di yr Ysbryd Glân, which is Send Thou to Us the Holy Ghost. The first verse of this will be read in Welsh by a most distinguished man of letters known throughout Wales by his barding name of Caernarfon.
With my hand on the book that has shaped the destiny of the Welsh nation, the first translation of the Bible into our language in 1588 by Bishop William Morgan, let us unite in the singing of our opening hymn, invoking the guidance of the Holy Spirit in this act of worship. O anfon di yr Ysbryd Glân, yn enw Iesu mawr, a'i weithrediadau megis tân, o dyled ef I lawr.
Reverend G.O. Williams, Esgob Bangor, the Bishop of Bangor.
Will you please be seated for the readings? The reading from the first letter of St. Peter. Beloved, I beseech you as aliens and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh that wage war against your soul. Maintain good conduct among the Gentiles, so that in case they speak against you as wrongdoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to praise those who do right. For it is God's will that by doing right you should put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. Live as free men, yet without using your freedom as a pretext for evil, but live as servants of God. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the emperor.
President of the Free Church Council of Wales, the Most Reverend Gwilym Owen, reads in Welsh o'r Efengil yn ôl St Matthew, from the Gospel according to St Matthew, chapter 22, verses 15 to 22.
Yna, wedi iddynt glywed ar Iesu yn llefaru, raeth y Phariseaid ac a gymerasant gyngor pa fodd yr hwydent efo ei ymadrodd. A hwyaddau'n fonasant ato ei disgyblion ynghyd â'r Herodianiaid, gan ddywedyd a thro. Ni awyddom dy fod yn eirwyr ac yn dysgu ffordd Duw mewn gwirionedd. Ac nad oes arnat ofal rhag neb. Oblig nid wyt ti yn edrych ar wyneb dynion. Dywed yn ei gan hynny, beth yr wyt yn ei dybied? A'i cyfreithlon rhoddi teyrnged i Cesar, a'i nad yw. Ond yr Iesu a wybu ei drigion i hwy, ac a ddywedodd, pa hamar ydych yn fy nhemtio i? Hwy rhag grithwyr. Dangoswch i mi arian y deyrnged. A hwy a ddygasant ato geiniog. Ac efe a ddywedodd wrthynt, eiddo pwy yw'r ddelw hon ar argraff. Dywedasant wrtho eiddo Cesar. Yna dywedodd wrthynt, telwch wythau, yr eiddo Cesar i Cesar. A'r eiddo Duw i Dduw. A phan glwsan dwy hyn rhyfedd iawn eithant, a'i adaelef, a myned ymaith.
The Lord's Prayer will be led by the Auxiliary Bishop of Menivia, the Right Reverend Langton Fox.
And now, in Welsh or in English, as each prefers, let us say all together the prayer our Lord Jesus Christ himself taught us, the Our Father, Ein Tad. Ein Tad, a hwnwyd yn y nefoedd, sanctaidd dy enw, deled dy dairnas, melod yr chwathles, megus yn y nef, fechli an y dair hefyd. Daro i ni heddiw ein arabainaddion, am a ddau i ni ein daledion, fel am a ddau ninnau un daledion. Ac na gorwain ni I profedigaeth, aeth y gwared ni rhagdrwg, canisaeth o ti o'r danas, ar nerth, ar gogoniant, yn oes oesoedd. Amen.
The Archbishop of Cardiff, the Most Reverend John Murphy, will now offer a prayer for the Prince of Wales.
Let us pray for Charles, our Prince. O God, who art the glory of the righteous and the mercy of sinners, who has sent thy Son to redeem mankind with his most precious blood, and upon whose goodness and pleasure the strength of all kingdoms doth depend, we humbly beseech thee to bless this thy servant Charles, who putteth his confidence in thy mercy. Vouchsafe in thy favour to be present with him, crown him with the crown of justice and piety, that with all his heart and with all his mind he may trust in thee and serve thee. Kindle, O Lord, his heart with the love of thy grace, that loving justice and leading his people by the ways of righteousness, after the glorious course of this life which thou hast appointed him, he may come to thine eternal joy through Christ our Lord. Amen.
The Archbishop of Wales, the Most Reverend Glyn Simon, will offer in Welsh Gweddi dros undeb, which is a prayer for unity.
O arglwydd Iesu Grist, a ddywedais wrth yr apostolion, caddawa fi chwi dang nefydd, fan angnefydd o rodda fi chwi. Nag edrych ar ein pechodau, ond ar ffydd dy eglwys, a bydded yn byw gennyt a'i heddychu a'i huno yn ôl dy ywellus di, sy'n byw ac yn ternasu yn oes oesoedd. Amen.
The second hymn will now be sung, also in Welsh. Cofian gwlad ben llywydd Tirion. That is, O gracious Lord, take heed of this, our land. The first verse will be read by Gwyndaf, the Reverend E. Gwyndaf Evans, Archdruid of Wales.
Let us now unite in the singing of the second hymn, seeking the blessing of Almighty God on the Welsh nation. Cofian gwlad ben llywydd Tirion, dy gyfiawnder fyddoi gryn, cadw hi rhag llyd gelynion, rhag ei beiau'n fwy na dim, rhag pob brad nefol dad, taena dadain dros ein gwlad.
Finally, the blessing. It will be pronounced by the President of the Free Church Council of Wales in Welsh.
Our benediction. Tangnefedd Duw, yr hwn sydd uwchlaw pob deall, a gyd o eich calonau a'ch meddyliau yng Nghrist Iesu, a gras ein harglwydd Iesu Grist, a chariad Duw, a chymdeithas yr ysbryd glân, a fydd o gyda chwi oll, byth bythau. Amen.
Now that the ceremony of investiture and the religious service are over, we come to the presentations of the Prince to his people. We shall see a procession headed by Wales and Chester heralds, Garter King of Arms, Earl Marshal and the Lord Great Chamberlain, immediately preceded by the Lord of State, and the Prince and his mother and father will go first to Queen Eleanor's Gate, the Queen's Gate. In former days, the eastern entrance of the castle reached by a drawbridge set high in the castle walls. This moment is based on the legend that Edward I showed his infant son to the people of Wales at this spot. And it was here that the Prince's great-uncle was shown to the people in 1911.
Yes, sir.
A great shout goes up from the children. You've probably spotted the Prince coming down the steps to this specially constructed platform. In front of him, you will see the statue of Lloyd George, the town square with its vast crowds, and beyond the square, the mountains of Snowdonia.
There is no mistaking spontaneous applause, and this is the real thing. And, well, I make no bones about it. Mae'n gyffrous dros ben. I find it very moving. His youth and his modest bearing, it's a good combination.
Now the royal procession turns to make its way across the upper ward of the castle for a further presentation. second presentation takes place at the King's Gate. And this will give the people in these stands here in the castle ditch their first sight of the prince since his investiture. Over the oldest part of Caernarfon, the old town that grew up around the castle in the 14th century. Now back into the castle, and the third presentation to the people in the lower ward. With the Queen goes down to be presented to the people in the lower ward of the castle. Some of them, about 800 of them, have not had a particularly good view of the investiture. So here again, they're getting their first close sight of the prince in his robes after his investiture. Enthusiasm from these representatives of the people of Wales. And soon a mighty antiphonal fanfare will be sounded from the battlements of all the towers, with the orchestra and bands taking part. so today's great ceremony in Caernarfon Castle virtually comes to an end. Her Majesty, the Prince and the Duke go down into the Eagle Tower, and when they emerge at the Watergate, there'll be a fly past by 16 aircraft of the Royal Air Force, Phantoms and Lightnings. This is one of the most difficult bits of timing in the whole of today's ceremony. They'll be flying in from the southwest, now at 360 miles an hour, and they should meet with the Queen as she comes out onto the Watergate steps. The fly past commanded by Air Vice Marshal Martin, the last serving pilot of the Dam Busters raid. Now here comes the fly past. 12 Phantom aircraft, 4 Lightnings. Just a glimpse of the fly past. Rather low cloud here today. Another quick shot of them as they go away at 800 feet. Aircraft from Royal Air Force squadrons in strike and air support commands in close formation. And now it's time for the departure of the Queen and the Prince of Wales to leave Caernarfon Castle. Carriages will be brought up. As these carriages move off, Guard of Honour of the Welsh Guards will give the royal salute. The royal standard will be lowered on the Eagle Tower, and all those present in the castle will signal the end of this rare and splendid ceremony. There is the royal family, all together. The younger children didn't come today. Perhaps it was rather a long ceremony for them. Just a momentary pause while the other members of the royal family get into their carriages. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, Princess Margaret, in the carriage behind. Queen Mother, Princess Anne, and the master of the horse, Duke Beaufort, in that carriage. And now the Prince is coming up to the town square of Caernarfon. Warm-hearted, smiling reception for the Prince. Responds in the same way in the town square of Caernarfon. So the Prince goes off now back to join the royal train, and then later he'll embark on his progress through Wales, culminating with the award to him of the freedom of the capital city, Cardiff. And as they go, perhaps I may be allowed a word on behalf of all the non-Welsh people who've witnessed this ceremony today, both in Caernarfon itself and throughout the world. Our thanks to Wales, this most hospitable of countries. Mae'n bleser mawr I mi fod yma. Diolch.
And may I, on behalf of the Welsh, both here at home and all over the world, may I say that we are confident that when the day dawns for our present Prince to become our future King, a day when his responsibilities must grow inevitably heavier and more numerous, we are confident that he will always keep, for Wales, a place in his heart. As for us, we have already declared ourselves. Dyw a bendithio ein tywysog newydd Cymru. God bless the Prince of Wales.